Good evening, everyone, and in this video, we are going to talk about Luxray, Aggron, and Vikavolt. We now have details on their ingredient lists, which is huge. And then in the widget, I've also put in their main skill, which we know, their inventory, and the frequency. Now, we don't yet know the ingredient rates, but I'm going to make some rough estimates as for where I think they may be. As for the skill rate, I don't think it's going to be relevant for any of these, except maybe the Luxray. Surprise, surprise, which is kind of twisted because the Luxray overall, I think, was done real dirty. I wish they would have put some more appreciation for Luxray into this kit that it's got. I saw in some of the online forums or forums or discussion or groups that they were not too upset with this Luxray. I don't know if we needed another tomato Pokemon, and I don't think we needed another oil Pokemon, and so let's talk about it. The Luxray is actually pretty fast. That is one of its strong points. It's also got a decent inventory. Of the 3 new evolutionary lines that were introduced now with the old gold powered plant, Luxray has the highest inventory, sitting at 21, and that is pretty big. Just like, let's compare it to the Tyranitar, for example. 19. How about Dragonite? 20. What about Gengar? 18. What about Beware? 20. And then Luxray comes with 21. Kind of crazy. And then the tomatoes. I don't have a whole widget or setup or anything for the new dishes, but one of the dishes do require a lot of tomatoes. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the other dishes requires a lot of oil. So I think for the most part, it's just Luxray now exists. It's probably power crept a whole bunch of Pokemon that a lot of us already have invested, and maybe that is one of the things that could be funny to look at in this video, because we can sort by the ingredients that have already been unlocked. And so for tomatoes, we can see the following. I have a really good Victory Bell. Look at this. It is mono tomato. It's a Victory Bell. It's got ingredient finding M, berry finding, the skill up, no, with the speed up, I'm sorry, nature with some inventory. So speed up nature, mono list, ingredient finding M, berry finding and inventory as a combo in the right slots too. So I'm pretty set on the tomatoes, and if I for whatever reason would need more tomatoes, I have this Victory Bell, which I invested in early on. This was one of my first Pokemon, and for a good while it actually did quite a lot of work. Now, obviously, speed down nature is really bad. We can bring up Victory Bell in the widget so that we can all see what we're talking about. The speed down natures are just detrimental, but in this case, the specialty is having some justification here for it not being completely bad. So ingredient finding up is a huge boost to the ingredient finding rate. And for Victory Bell, 24%-ish 3, that's a big boost. And then I was thinking, yeah, this is going to be a long-term, like, super good Pokemon, but it's not bad. It's just tomatoes overall hasn't been the best ingredient. And now that there are some bigger dishes, and I also happened to have found some good replacements because I just happened to continue hunting for the Bellsprout, I also have this, my Venusaur. Now it is a mixed ingredient list. This was one of my earlier Pokemon too, but this is actually a decent Pokemon despite the fact that it's got a mixed list. Now, mono ingredient Pokemon are super strong and should not be overlooked, and it's just in some cases you can make some trade-offs, and in this case I just made those trade-offs because we have Venusaur right here with a ridiculous ingredient rate, and for the most part, if you're aiming at getting an ingredient specialist to level 60, you can almost ignore the A ingredient because it's going to give you the ingredient in so low volumes anyway that it's almost negligible. because you get 1/3 of this, 1/3 of this, and 1/3 of this. And you can see like this is 3 times as big as this, and this one is 2 times as big as this. And at that point, this thing right here is just what? A 1/9 of the total volume of what you're producing. So tomatoes and potatoes is what I'll be getting at level 60, which is right around the corner. And then we can look at the subskills. Ingredient Finding Up Nature, Ingredient Finding M subskill, Helping Speed M, Ingredient Finder S, Helping Speed S, Skill Level Up M on an Ingredient Finding Pokemon that is kind of a mixed random Vaporeon substitute anyway, and I've put a seed into it, so it's just, in some cases, that can make sense, and there happens to be a dish that makes a lot of sense for this Venusaur in particular, which is the Dream Meter Butter Curry, where if we just have the Venusaur here on display, and I quickly reset here and search by water types, I have a Blastoise that has also a, it's not completely mixed, but it's a milk-focused set. Here too, some compromises can be made. I have milk, and cacao, and so on net, I'll get a little bit more cacao than milk, but I get a lot of both, and I need a lot of both in an equal portion for the Dream Eater Butter Curry. And so across these two Pokemon, with the mixed sets, I can cook up one of the stronger dishes still. Like, it's been power crept for sure, but it's still pretty big and strong. And so if you can cook that easily, and then have more berry specialists on the team at other times a day, then that's going to be huge. So Helping Bonus, Ingredient Finding M, Helping Speed M, with a Speed Up Nature, is just very strong Pokemon. So one of the priorities for me currently is actually not catching new Pokemon. I just want to get my Blastoise and my Venusaur to level 60. So let's hop back to the Luxray discussion. Luxray has a Mono Tomatoes option. It can be used alongside Raikou. It's favored berry at the new area, so it's got a lot of things going for it. So overall, it's not like, it's probably not a terrible Pokemon in general. It's just a lot of us has already covered the use case for the Luxray and probably won't redo a potato. I know what am I saying? The tomato Pokemon probably won't redo the oil Pokemon. And I don't know. So yeah, the tomato situation for me is pretty good. I have this one. Speed Up Nature, Ingredient Finding S, and a Monolist. That checks off 3 boxes for the Monolist, and at that point, I'm happy. I have my tomato boy. Look at this one. Ingredient Finding M, Ingredient Finding S, Ingredient Finding Up Nature, Monolist, cracked. Don't need tomatoes, so we've established that. Let's take a look at the oil situation. What is that like? So, I have a Ditto, which I use a lot, and so usually I get a bit of supplemental oil from the Ditto. I understand that this Ditto is a little bit confused, although it has the Ingredients Up Nature, huge. It has Ingredient Finding M coming up at level 75. I'm going to sub-skill seed it, and I like the mixed set on the Ditto personally. An alternative can be Oil Tail instead of the leaks, so you have an oil focus with those nice tails. But it has the Inventory L plus the Berry Finding and the Ingredient Finding M coming up. And that's a good combo. And so I have a good chunk of oil there. I have a Lucario. I understand Lucario not among the best Pokemon, but it's got a decent chunk of oil. And I do use it on my team for in prep weeks, because then I can get some Dream Shards if I've hit whatever Drowsy Power requirement I'm looking for in that given week. And yeah, those are some of my high level Pokemon. Then I have this Ditto coming up. Look at this. It's got Inventory, Ingredient Finding Up Nature. It's got Helping Speed M and S. It's got Ingredient Finding M at 50. So you just look at 50 and below. 1 sub-skill seed, and this is busted. I probably won't get another Ditto to level 60 anytime soon, but as far as I know, Ditto is available at all the islands, and so there's a decent chunk of Ditto candy just floating around. So another oil, and then I happen to find a pretty decent mono oil Toxicroak. Toxicroak is underrated, I think. It's not S tier by far. Maybe not even A tier, but it does its job nicely for the oil. So, ingredient finding M, ingredient up nature, and at that point in time, you've checked 3 boxes on the mono lists, and you can be happy. So that's at least my assessment. And then, yeah, I do have a Toxicroak. That was not that one. I have a lot of Toxicroak. Let's see this one. This is not as good. It's actually pretty bad. But it's also mono oil. It has the berry finding inventory. Speed down kind of sucks, but yeah. Overall, I'm pretty set in terms of the oil too, so I don't really know what to do with the Luxray. Now, in case Luxray happens to have a skill rate above 4%, that could be pretty big. And that may be what's going on here, I don't know. We'll just have to see. And I'm gonna hide the game here because if we do like this, we can compare the Luxray to, let's say, Meowscarada. They have the same skill. Meowscarada is slower. Probably around 2% on the Luxray, but if it is around 4%, that's going to be pretty big because then you have Pokemon like Glaceon. 6%, that's pretty huge. We talked about Magnezone in my primary count video today. 6% too. And then maybe the Luxray has like 3 or 4%, then it can be useful for something other than tomatoes, which is a little bit of a letdown, but yeah. It has coffee beans at level 60, but I don't think that justifies the reason to work on that Luxray all the way to level 60 to get 5 coffee beans. Actually, don't even get 5, you get 1/3 of 5. And so I think at this point in time, we hop on over to Aggron. Keep the most exciting to last for the Vikavolt. Aggron, I am more interested in overall. As I've explained earlier, it is really the B ingredients. What am I saying? Not the B, but it's the level 30 and the level 60 columns. These ones right here. Oh, you can't see when I highlight. Okay, so the level 30 columns and the level 60 columns. If you intend to bring a Pokemon all the way to level 60, it's really important to consider those 2 last slots way more than the first, because the first barely makes a difference. It doesn't make a dent. And then it's essentially just if you keep a Pokemon at level 30 that the A kind of makes a lot of sense, because it's 50% of those ingredients you get and at lower volumes and all that. So Aggron could potentially be a viable coffee Pokemon. But we do have a mono option, which we'll get to. Though I would say Aggron, it reminds me a lot of Blastoise, I gotta say. All the numbers are the same, basically. It's slower, and that's probably to like compensate a little bit for the fact that the coffee is basically the same value as the cow, and milk and sausage are basically the same too, and sausage and beans too. So it's very 1-to-1. Maybe it's the higher value berry that makes it slower. I don't know. I suspect that Aggron has a rate on the ingredients around 28. If it is 28 or higher, then ABB Aggron is going to be very strong. And the reason is not only is it viable at level 60 if you can get it there, it has favored berry on Old Gold Power Plant, which the Vikavolt does not. Now, I'm not going to go through my whole portfolio here on the account again for sausage, because I actually don't have a lot of sausage Pokemon. I have a pretty decent Charizard that does ginger mostly, and at that point in time, I don't really have many sausage Pokemon. So for me personally, I'll probably go for the mono sausage on the Aggron, because I don't have an Aggron, or well, most people don't have an Aggron, but I don't have a Beans Pokemon right now. And I don't think I want to redo a Charizard. What I have now is decent. And yeah. I have an Entei. Maybe the Charizard makes more sense, but either way, let's compare the Vikavolt to the Aggron. Vikavolt is the mono coffee Pokemon. Caught everyone by surprise, maybe even more so than the fact that the Luxray was done so dirty. All 3 new Pokemon evolution lines are ingredient specialists, which is very surprising. Most of us was on the Hopian, on the Aggron being a berry specialist for the steel type, and ended up being an ingredient specialist. And we've had so many ingredient specialist Pokemon recently that we kind of were due maybe for another skill specialist that did not have 1 stage evolution. So Vikavolt having 2 evolutions would be kind of nice for that skill, but here we are. So there are a couple things, like Vikavolt overall is by far the strongest newly introduced Pokemon, and it is a bit meta-defining in multiple ways. I've heard people being excited about the honey at level 60, which I can understand to an extent because all of these ingredients go really well with desserts and mushrooms and coffee beans, or rousing coffee. If I'm not mistaken, they go well with dishes, and at that point in time, if you happen to find like coffee, honey, it may not be a huge deal, but personally I would recommend, just because of how influential now coffee is with the new dishes, that the triple coffee on the Vikavolt is a priority. Unless somehow you get a very, very good roll on Aggron and get double coffee on Aggron. And so personally, I'll probably just hunt both in parallel for a good while and then see what happens. Whatever happens, happens. If I find a really strong Aggron that is double coffee, then I may go back and hunt another Charmander for the sausage. And then the Vikavolt will then probably just be something. I don't know. I'm pretty set on honey. I'm pretty set on mushrooms. It's mostly just this new ingredient, coffee, that I haven't covered. And it's kind of nice to have 2 species to try to roll the dice on. And especially when the Vikavolt is a mono cacao Pokemon. The big difference between these two will obviously be the ingredient rate. I suspect, as I compared Aggron to Blastoise earlier, that Aggron will have an ingredient rate closer to 30% base. Maybe 28, that's my guess. 29 would be kind of cool. I think anything below 25 would just make it dead on arrival, to be honest. It would not be good compared to the Charizard in terms of sausage, and it would not be good in terms of coffee compared to the Vikavolt. And Vikavolt is an interesting Pokemon there with the mushrooms at level 30. It's almost to the point where if you find an ABA Vikavolt, it doesn't matter as much, just because those mushrooms are always nice to tuck away in the bag. They are a high value ingredient used in a lot of the top tier dishes. And yeah, it's just that level 30 column with the B ingredient is a little bit of a hassle at times when you try to follow strictly the mono ingredient meta. So maybe on the Vikavolt, you do something like this, just hide away from the honey. Maybe cacao honey could make sense, but I wouldn't go for an all mixed list or something like that. Maybe the double mushroom if you really don't want to hunt Wooper, which I don't know why you wouldn't. Quagsire is pretty busted, and it's also available at the new area. I did a lot of research, and I've updated the nirtheart spreadsheet, which I'll also have to make a video on today. So triple cacao on the Vikavolt. We'll just see what happens with the ingredient rate. I think Vikavolt probably can be compared to Gengar. Gengar is a lot faster though. Maybe Absol is a better Pokemon. Yeah. We do back to Gengar. It's not looking good for the Vikavolt in terms of the ingredient rate, but then again, if you can find that mono coffee Vikavolt, it's going to be pretty strong and reliable. And you'll just have to decide on whether or not you dual hunt Aggron and Vikavolt like I'm going to do, or if you just have already decided that you've bought in on the Mono Coffee Vikavolt. So I'm super excited in this video in particular. If you guys have any thoughts on the new Pokemon, please leave a comment on this video. I would love to hear your thoughts and discuss with you in the comments on all things Old Gold Power Plant and the coffee and the new dishes, and maybe you're excited for Luxray. I was really hoping we got another egg Pokemon, but that will have to be sometime in the future maybe. And then, yeah, the last thing I can mention there is I'll probably end up going back to Snowdrop Tundra after having spent some time at Old Gold Power Plant and just really nail this Delibird, especially now that I have another 15% potential in the area bonus that I can put to use in getting as fast as possible to 150 mil Drowsy, which is where the Delibird likes it. So hope you've enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and I look forward to hear from you in the comments. Thank you very much for watching.